The Ghostbusters franchise, to its fans, has been held in high regard since the conclusion of the second film in 1989. Since then, fans have been wondering, would we ever hear the sirens of Echo 1 racing through the streets of New York? Or feel the power of a proton pack roaring to life? Is anyone worthy of donning the tan jumpsuit that identifies them as a Ghostbuster? That question would be answered in 2016 to a movie so poorly received it almost destroyed a legacy. Thanks to director Jason Reitman, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and Ernie Hudson, we once again have reason to celebrate. So when you come face to face with a member of the undead, who you gonna call?
Lights, camera, rolling, action.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Let Me Be Frank, a podcast about movies. And today, we got a pretty good one. I'm excited to do this show today because we get to talk about one of my favorite franchises. But before we get into that, please don't forget to subscribe. There are new episodes every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Also, make sure to leave a comment. Let me know how I'm doing so that I can continue to try and improve the show. And like I said, I'm excited for today's show. We're going to be debuting a new segment, a new best of list called Frank's Icon List. It's going to be a fun one. Can't wait to debut it. So based off the description and the title, y'all know why we're here today. Ghostbusters. Now, before we get into the good stuff and we go up, we got to go down a little bit because we're going to real briefly talk about the 2016 version of this movie. So I did a little bit of research and tried to figure out why it failed. According to the actors and actresses within the movie, they believe it's because of an all-female cast. People seem to have not liked it from the beginning as soon as they heard that it was going to be an all-female cast. I kind of disagree, but obviously I'm not in everybody's head. This movie, from the people who've seen it, because I never actually went to see it, I heard that it was bad. It bombed in the box office. I watched about 15 minutes of it, and it seemed like it didn't have anything to do with the regular Ghostbusters. So that movie was a flop. It seemed like the franchise was going to be dead in the water. I was telling a friend of mine at work about the newer movies, what we're going to be discussing here today. And he immediately went, "Oh, no, thank you," because he thought it was a continuation of the 2016 version. And that's the issue that this movie caused. It turned people away from anything that would be done in the future for this franchise, simply because that movie was as bad as it was, as poorly received as it was. Apparently, they didn't stick to the original storyline. They turned former Ghostbusters into characters that they'd never been, which didn't really make any sense. You have a built-in fan base, you have source material. Just stick to the source material, and at least the core fans, which is a lot of people, will go see it. But we see that a lot in movies, even when they're doing adaptations of a cartoon like Avatar, animes like Death Note, Dragon Ball, which is a conversation for another day. But we are done talking about the bad. We are going to get into two fantastic movies. We're starting with Ghostbusters Afterlife. We're going in order because that's how it makes sense. So here we go. A seemingly old man is running through a dirt field, chased by something that we cannot see. He's trying to activate something at his house, but it seems to not be working. He pulls out another device that seems to only be active when ghosts are present. A ghost dog looking thing appears behind him, and then disappears into smoke, much like the monster that you would see from the first Ghostbusters film. Arms reach out of the chair and grab onto him. We get a shot of the outside of the house as a beam of light flies away. We cut back to the inside of the house. We see him sitting in the chair, motionless. At this point, we can assume that he is no longer alive. Based off his side profile, it looks like Egon Spangler. Next, we meet a family of three, a mom, daughter, and a son. The mom's name is Collie, the daughter's name is Phoebe, the son's name is Trevor. They seem to be struggling financially just by the way their apartment looks. She gets a knock at the door from her landlord to be told that she is being evicted. We see them driving into a small town and they are making their way to the house from the opening scene. So they're back at the little farmhouse. Turns out that Egon Spangler is the father and grandfather to the people we just met. So they don't have a key when they show up. So Kali asks Phoebe to pick the lock, which is going to be a theme that we see a lot. She's constantly asking her to do semi illegal things. No, they're not semi, they're completely illegal. You can't just break into a house. As they break into the house and they're looking around, Janine shows up. If you don't remember Janine, she is the receptionist from the original films. She informs them that there's quite a bit of debt attached to the property and she may not be able to sell the house for much of anything. She informs the Kali informs the kids after a small earthquake that they're probably going to be staying there because they don't have any money and they have nowhere else to go. Later that night, they go out to dinner and Trevor meets a girl named Lucky. He also applies for a job. Soon, Phoebe is enrolled into summer school and meets a new friend. The new friend is named Podcast. I'll give you one guess as to why they named him Podcast. Go ahead, think about it. Yeah, he's going to be doing that throughout the entire movie. We are then introduced to the summer school teacher, Mr. Groberton. Now, I don't know why they made his name so difficult to remember and say, but his first name's Gary, so we're calling the motherfucker Gary. Gary is a seismologist, and if you don't know what a seismologist is, they study earthquakes and volcanic activity under the earth. He tells Phoebe that it's very odd that this town has earthquakes on a daily basis because, from what he was able to discover, there is no volcanic activity nor tectonic plates in this town. So, if you don't know what tectonic plates are, they are the plates under the earth that cause earthquakes. As they shift around, it causes the ground to shake, and California just has like a whole line of them going down, which is why they have so many earthquakes. This town doesn't have any, so it shouldn't be happening. At this point, Phoebe does not believe in ghosts, which is ironic because of who her grandfather was and what he used to do. Podcast then takes Phoebe to show her something. He takes her to an abandoned mine and gives her a brief history on the town. That would have been way too much to do on the podcast, so I highly encourage you to go see this movie. Later that night, she finds the ghost detector from earlier, and an unseen spirit starts to lead her towards the living room. Eventually, she finds the trap that the Ghostbusters used to trap ghosts. You know, when they would shoot them with the proton pack, they slide that thing out and they stomp on the pedal and it opens up and they get sucked in. So she finds that. She doesn't know what it is, what it's used for. So she takes it to summer school the next day and doesn't realize, obviously, what it is. But Gary instantly recognizes it because he was a kid during the events of the first two movies. She hasn't told him that that's her grandfather. She just said she found it in her living room, which would be odd. Why would that shit just be laying around your living room? Uh, then, okay. They make so in movies, people make dumbass decisions all the time. This one was one of the more egregious ones because normally characters will often do things out of ignorance because they don't know, but Gary knows what this is. He knows that there's a possibility that there's something in it. So they take it in the school parking lot and they open the fucking trap. I did not understand this. I understand if the kids did it without him, but the fact that this dude was there, I'm like, my guy, you know what is inside. You know what could possibly happen if you open the trap. Yet he did it anyway. So that had me a bit, I don't even know what to say, befuzzled. So later on, Gary takes both the kids back to Phoebe's house. He wants to hit on their mom, but he's kind of hiding it under the guise of wanting to take a tour of the house. Eventually, Phoebe wanders around while everyone else is off doing their own thing. She finds all the Ghostbusters stuff, the uniforms, the proton packs, and all the experiments that Spangler was conducting before his death. So at this point in the movie, they start giving us all the Ghostbusters shit we've been waiting on. Phoebe goes into what looks like an old like steel mill with the proton pack and the trap and tries to catch herself a ghost, but obviously it's not going to work on the first try. Next thing, Trevor fixes up Echo 1 and he starts ripping through cornfields. First of all, he almost got cursed out by me because he made an insulting comment about the vehicle. I had to tell him to watch his fucking mouth because you don't talk bad about that vehicle. That thing's going to save your life. So he's tearing through the cornfield, and it was so nice to see and hear Echo One just doing its thing. So soon, Phoebe and Podcast run into Trevor, not physically, but they run into him while he's driving down a dirt road. They tell Trevor what they found. Obviously, he's not going to believe them because he didn't see it with his own eyes. And then they hear on the police scanner that is inside Echo 1 that there is a monster eating a metal truck. And so they name the ghost Muncher because it's munching on stuff. Not very creative, but it gets the job done. And they go looking for him. This is kind of their first like Ghostbusters mission. There's an amazing action sequence of them chasing this monster through the town with Phoebe just blasting away with the proton pack. There's got to be some long-term effects from just shooting this thing off into the air. They eventually catch the monster and trap him. Later on, they get pulled over, and obviously, they all get arrested because they don't have any paperwork and they are all way too young to be doing the shit that they are doing. So, after they're arrested, Phoebe gets a phone call, like everybody does when they go to jail. She gets her phone call, and instead of calling her mom, she calls the phone number from the commercials, the old Ghostbusters commercials. She doesn't even know if the phone number is going to work. She calls it, and Ray answers the phone, sitting in Ray's Occult, the shop that he has owned and operated since the original films. So it was great to see that they actually stuck to that part. Wonder why the other movie couldn't do that. She calls Ray, the phone number from the first movie. He answers the phone and almost hangs up several times. He talks about the downfall of the Ghostbusters. He gives us a very quick update on what everybody's been up to since after the sixth movie. Later on, Gary gets chased by the same looking little dog thing from the first movie. It almost seems like a recreation of the Rick Moranis scene from the original film when he's chased and then captured by the little demon dog. The kids go to an abandoned mine shaft and discover the kids later on go into an abandoned mine shaft where they discover the creator of what is going on in this town. He also is the architect that built the building in New York in the original films that is like a beacon for evil. As they look around, they notice that there's a bunch of traps set. So it seems that Spangler set up traps in case the monster ever attempted to get out. He would almost 100% be caught. The kids travel back to the farmhouse and they see that their mom has been taken by Zool, and they're now looking for the keymaster. I say there when I'm describing the adults after possession because there's more than one person in there now. So Gary, who has also been taken over, heads down to the abandoned mine shaft and destroys the traps that were set by Spangler, thus releasing the evil into the world. The kids rush to the police station to get their proton packs back. They also manage to get Etco 1 and the trap, and they head off towards the volcano to fight Gozer. They manage to make it all the way back to the farmhouse with the gatekeeper trapped inside. So, after getting back to the farmhouse, the Stay Puff Marshmallow men, go ahead and remember that I said men, ruin what is actually a pretty good plan to release the gatekeeper, and Gozer comes back to full power. So, this is where things really start to get hairy for them. The plan that they come up with to defeat the bad guy in this one is actually a pretty good plan. You can tell that the writers put actual time into, coming up with an actual, as realistic as can be for this movie, a plan to defeat the monster. But I am not going to spoil this ending for you. If you are a fan of the originals, you're going to want to see this ending. Now, I don't think I'm spoiling anything by letting you know that the good guys win, because that's just how the movies go. We always know that the Ghostbusters find a way to get the job done. In this case, it's more of how they got it done that made this ending of the movie, like, I could not have think of a better way to end this movie. This is a beautiful, touching ending. You might even get the little corners of your eyes burning, but this was a good ending, and I do not want to spoil it for you. I am giving this movie 4 and 3/4 proton packs out of 5. This was such a good movie. My description doesn't even do it justice for how well everything goes together, how everything eventually comes together, and how they eventually get the job done. I can't say enough good stuff about this movie. It was so well done, from the effects to the acting to the new additions that makes the movie fresh. Because yeah, we've seen Etco 1. It's an iconic vehicle, but it's still, they still did things to freshen it up and to keep us interested. It's a shame that the movie that preceded this one did such damage that people were hesitant to invest in it. But I'm telling you, please take this recommendation. It is well worth your time to go out of your way to see this movie. This was great, and I am elated that we have an actual good Ghostbusters movie to go and watch again. So that is going to conclude the first film that we're going to discuss today, Ghostbusters Afterlife. I believe it is on FX on demand. You can also rent it if you want to watch it commercial free, which I always prefer. But yeah, this one was good. We're going to take a short break, and we're going, before we get into the next film, and we're going to get into the new segment. Yes, let's go. New segment. I know. I'm excited just like you are. This is Frank's Iconic List, and for this, the very first list, since I mentioned Etco 1 as many times as I did, I decided to put together a list of iconic movie vehicles. My most iconic movie vehicles. I have a top 5 list with 3 honorable mentions. So we're going to start with the top five, and then between two and one, we're going to do our honorable mentions. All right. Starting with number five, Jurassic Park Ford Explorer. It's iconic. When you see the side of the vehicle, you instantly know, even if you take the little dinosaur out of the emblem. If I just showed you a picture of the vehicle, you'd probably know the movie it came from. Number four, Bumblebee, Chevy Camaro. I understand he was a punch bug, and to kids who grew up in the 80s watching the cartoons, that is Bumblebee. I did not watch the Transformers cartoons as much, but I sure as hell watched all the movies, and Bumblebee being the Chevy Camaro to me is iconic. It's instantly recognizable. If you see one driving down the street, you don't think, oh, I like that Chevy Camaro. No, you think Bumblebee. Number three is a 1941 Chevy Coe, Coe, however you say that. That would be the van from Jeepers Creepers. If you've seen Jeepers Creepers and that vehicle was driving behind you, you're getting the hell out of there. That vehicle is intimidating, it is ugly as shit, and you know when you see that vehicle that it is time for you to gun it to 88 and get the hell out of there. Speaking of gun it to 88, where we're going, we don't need roads. The number two most iconic vehicle of all time, in my opinion, the DeLorean, Back to the Future franchise. This movie is beautiful. I love the Back to the Future franchise. This car is also, I believe, on the cover of both movies if you look them up. So now we're going to get into our honorable mentions. They were just outside the list. They just, for me, weren't iconic enough, but they are still highly recognizable. So the number three honorable mention is the Mystery Machine from Scooby Doo. When you see it, you see it, you know it, you know it. Number two is going to be the black 1970 Dodge Charger RT, better known as Dom's car from the Fast and Furious franchises. He's used it in several movies. It always pops up on two wheels when he, guns it, and that's kind of like his go-to savior car. Number one honorable mention, in my opinion, the only reason it's an honorable mention is because it doesn't appear enough throughout the franchise. It makes appearances here and there, but the Weasleys' flying car from the Harry Potter series. Love the car, especially, I believe it was in Chamber of Secrets. I want to say Chamber of Secrets. I could be wrong, but it does come back later on to save them from the giant spiders, which earns it a nice little mention. Now, here we go. The number one most iconic vehicle, in my opinion, in movie history is the Batmobile, the 1990 Batmobile from the original Michael Keaton Batman film. I understand that there has been a whole bunch of iterations of the Batmobile as the franchise has continued. To me, none of them, no matter how, they add the new toys and all the things that they do to it, none of them have that appeal that that original one had on me. Every time I see it, it just takes me back to the first time that I seen it. It was a beautiful car. It looked dangerous. It looked like it was impenetrable. That there's nothing you can do to get to the occupant inside, even though we know that's not true, but is an intimidating car if you're a criminal. And that is going to wrap up the first icon list. Now, this is where you, the listener, come in. There is a comment section here on Spotify. I want you to give me a list of your own, of your most iconic uh, vehicles. My rule was I had to have seen the movie in order to put it on my list. So there may be vehicles that I've never seen before because I haven't seen the movie. If they are, go ahead, head over to the comments, drop them in. I will read them if you put them up there because I would love to possibly discover a new movie. All right, so we're going to take a slight dip back down because I finally got around to watching the Captain America trailer. I am, I don't know how to feel. The trailer looks great. It does. It gives me Winter Soldier vibes, which Captain America and the Winter Soldier is probably, I would say, my first or second favorite. I would have to go back through all the movies again, but I know when I saw that one, I was blown away. The story, the action sequences, everything about Captain America and the Winter Soldier to me was peak MCU. They did some good stuff after, but nothing has ever touched Captain America and the Winter Soldier. This gives me those vibes, but the MCU has been absolute dog shit for the last what is it, year or two? Fuck, ever since Endgame, it has just been bad after bad after bad after bad. This has just been a poorly done mess from almost every single TV show because Falcon and the Winter Soldier was absolute shit. I was never a fan of the Falcon. To me, he's just a killable Iron Man. I just never enjoyed him. I'm okay with the actor. I'm hoping this movie's good. The MCU really needs a freshening up because this has just been awful. It has been. It has turned me off to superhero movies almost completely. And the bad part is they kind of have a monopoly on it because the DCU has been hot shit since the word go. They cannot do the DCU I'm talking about. They cannot do light-hearted funny. They needed to go a different route like the Batman, but they're trying to be too much like Marvel and it's never going to work because they're not Marvel. But Marvel can't even do Marvel because they're too busy trying to shoehorn things that don't belong in there. If a character is black, make him black. If the character's white, leave him white. It's fine because you have a core audience, like I talked about before, that will simply go see these movies based off the name recognition alone. And you have dragged down the MCU so much that it makes people hesitant. I refuse to go to an actual theater to watch these movies. I wait until they make it to Disney Plus so that I don't actually have to waste my time, leave my house, pay to go sit in a freezing cold ass movie theater to see something that's going to piss me off at the end because you just decided to just urinate all over what we wanted. But I'm going to hold out a little bit of hope. This looks like it could be a good movie. It looks like they put some time and effort into it. I really, really hope that this is a really good reboot. We'll talk about Doctor Doom another time. I want to stay up, and this is about as down as we're going to get on this one. And now we are going to move on, ladies and gentlemen, to our main event. That's right. We are moving on to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. The movie starts in 1904 New York City. The fire department, coming out of the same firehouse as the Ghostbusters occupy today, arrive at Manhattan Plaza, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a like a business office. They believe that there's a fire in one of the main offices. When they touch the door handle, one man's hand begins to freeze to it. They chop down the door and find the whole room is covered in ice and all the occupants are frozen stiff. As they inspect the room, they see someone sitting on the floor holding a sphere, a small sphere, about the size of like a softball or a grapefruit. Uh, the one firefighter approaches. The person begins to open their eyes, and all the humans that have been frozen explode into icy dust. So, one thing about these movies that I don't believe we saw a lot of in the originals is that motherfuckers are dying. Like, they're legit Xing people out. Um, I didn't mention it in the other one, but there's motherfuckers whose lives are gone now. So that's one huge change. The scene quickly cuts back to present day New York City to find the Ghostbusters Phoebe, Trevor, Collie, and now Gary are living in New York City as active Ghostbusters. They chase down a fire dragon through the streets. They get it trapped, but they destroy some property along the way. So when you think of a fire dragon, if you haven't seen this film yet, it's like when you see the Chinese parades and they are holding the paper dragon that's kind of going through. Imagine that just in spirit form, but going around and destroying things. They have a meeting with the mayor of New York City, who once again turns out to be an asshole. Surprise, surprise. Seems to be a theme that New York elects dickhead mayors. Not understanding that the Ghostbusters actually saved New York City once again, but he harps on the fact that Phoebe's only 15 years old and disallows her from being a Ghostbuster. She does not take this well and continues to argue with her mom and Gary about it. Meanwhile, Ray and Podcast have made their return and are running a YouTube channel where Ray has people come in and tries to assess whether they have a haunted object or not. And they're doing this for a very specific reason that we'll find out later. Phoebe visit Ray's occult. He's the shop he's been working at for forever, and a man comes in and sells Ray a box of his grandmother's things because she just passed and he needs the money. This box appears to include the sphere from the opening scene. Weird things start to happen. The containment chamber in the firehouse that they used to keep ghosts begins acting up, especially after an earthquake shakes New York City as Ray was inspecting the sphere. The Ghostbusters go out and leave Phoebe behind because the mayor says she can't be a Ghostbuster. Winston then sends an engineer named Lars to come and look at the entrapment for the ghost in the firehouse. Turns out it's way too full and it's eventually going to cause a problem like bursting open. The newer Ghostbusters didn't think that there was a plan, but Winston has been building something very special. Winston then brings everyone to an old aquarium and shows them the new containment center, which is essentially the entire aquarium. Now they get to watch and study ghosts to see why they're trapped here and what they can do to help some of these ghosts move on. Lucky makes her appearance as an intern for Winston. So now the entire cast from the original film, well, the original remake, the last one, Afterlife, is now back. Ray shows up with the sphere. They tried giving it a name. The one they landed on, or one that they at least mentioned, is called the Devil's Testicle. So that's what I'm going to be using to refer to this thing. So get used to hearing it. What they do with the objects at this new facility that Winston's created is that they extract the ghost out of the object and keep it contained within the aquarium sections. I don't know what they're called. When you go to an aquarium and you look behind the glass and there's an orca or something, it's behind the glass. The rest of the Ghostbusters, Gary, Collie, and Trevor get called to handle something downtown. Phoebe once again can't go, but she answers the phone and gets a call for help. Her and Podcast go on a rogue mission. Lucky and Lars, the engineer, are in the office extracting ghosts out of objects. Lucky then takes the Devil's Testicle and places it in the extractor to be extracted. All the other ghosts contained within the aquarium seem to be afraid of this object or whatever's inside. The power goes out temporarily. The ghosts begin to escape, but Lars manages to turn the power back on, which brings all the ghosts back in. He then opens the containment chamber, tries to take out the devil's testicle, and his hand begins to freeze and he drops it on the ground. Podcast and Phoebe arrive at a diner to find a ghost that she had talked to earlier in the film. She tries to run the ghost off, but she intentionally misses in order to not catch it because she feels bad for this ghost. The ghost seems relatively harmless, but that remains to be seen. Turns out this ghost is not so harmless. We find out a very short time later. This ghost is working for whatever is hidden inside of the devil's testicle, and it is using Phoebe to accomplish whatever mission it needs to. There's an earthquake the following morning which destroys the walls of the basement of the firehouse where the containment chamber is. Lars, Ray, Podcast, and Lucky are in the aquarium. Lars is showing Ray all the things that they do down there. It shuts down one of the pods and allows a possessor demon out, but no one knows it yet. A possessor demon kind of can just jump into an object or a person, kind of make them do whatever they want them to do. That one probably should have been moved a little further away and not been so close to where they were doing experiments, but not my facility. I didn't get to make the choices. I would have put that bitch way in the back. I mean, isolated from any and everything else because of what it's able to do, which makes it very dangerous. They then go back and they find the person who originally sold Ray the devil's testicle. Told you I was going to say it a lot. They take the guy who sold it to them to Peter to find out whether he is human or if he's been possessed by a ghost. Based off certain evidence, he has an entity in or around him. Podcast, Ray, and Phoebe went to see a special librarian who may know something about the orb. Turns out he knows a lot about this fucking thing. While he is telling them the history of the devil's testicle and plays a chant that is used to open in the opening scene to actually open the orb. So after the chant is stolen, Ray, Phoebe, and Podcast get arrested and they shut down the firehouse. There's a lot of infighting at this point amongst the Ghostbusters. They tell the person who sold Ray the devil's testicle that he is a part of an exclusive guardianship that has been charged with protecting the orb. They're called the Fire Starters. Phoebe leaves her body to hang out with the ghost girl. Phoebe unknowingly releases Grockus. That is the name of the villain in this movie. Everyone heads back to the firehouse because Grockus wants to open the containment chamber that the Ghostbusters have there to build his own undead army and take over the world. Now, once again, we are towards the end of the film. I believe that you should go ahead and watch this ending for yourself. As we all know, like I said before, the good guys win. Surprise, surprise, the good guys win. This was another great movie in the franchise. Now, it's not going to be as highly rated as the first one because the ending is just an ending. They eventually do defeat Grockus. Obviously, he didn't win and freeze the entire world and kill everybody because that's not typically how these movies end. They send the audience home happy. I was sent home very happy. They save the day, but he does get the containment chamber open, unleashing demons all over the world, which is a good thing because now I believe there's going to be another film. I think they should maybe narrow it down to one more and then go ahead and put a cap on it and find a way to kind of end the series. The last thing you want to do is have a Saw situation because every franchise ain't going to be Harry Potter. You're not going to be able to do 8 great movies that just get better as you go along. Eventually, more than likely, you're going to be Saw, where it's going to be good for a while and then it's going to dive off of a fucking cliff and people are going to stop caring and they're going to tell you you should have stopped 2 or 3 movies ago. So I think, based on everything that's happened, that they should do one more and then try to put a nice cap, a nice satisfying ending, and then we can just allow, these 5 Ghostbuster movies to be what they are, excluding the 2016 version because that one was disgusting. But, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I believe it was a fantastic movie. I'm going to give it, I'll say, 3.5 proton packs out of 5. Like I said, what got the first one, Afterlife, so highly rated was simply because of that ending. The last like 30 to 35 minutes of the movie was just spectacular. This ending was good. It left it open and gave us exactly what we needed to get us to the next film. But that first ending was just so impactful and so special. This one was just a good ending to a movie. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude the show for today. I will be back next Wednesday. What is it again? Hold on, I'm gonna get these times right. 6 p.m. Eastern, West Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining me. Keep watching those movies.